Recording?
Yeah, started.
Okay. I just got a big notification saying this meeting is being recorded. Kubernetes SIGs. Projects. So this is where we do our project planning, and this is in review. So we've always had our deadline to be demo one. So you'll see that milestone in a few places, even though we've actually gone past that milestone. We do have test cases now. No, there's there's another tab somewhere here. Let's put that here. Um, this is not done. Test case for validating. Yeah, this is done. Right, let's actually do it with the PR. It's still green, so I believe there's a PR left for it. Um, this is in the pipeline for sometime in the future. It's a future milestone. Add or remove finalizers on the bucket access. This is done. This I'm sure of. Okay. Process bucket access request delete. We do that also. Chris just opened. Oh, there's the link PR. Oh no, Chris added a PR, so that's actually solved. Process bucket request delete. This is also done. Add or remove finalizers on the bucket. That is also done. And credential rotation for access token. This just won't do. Yeah, I'll just put it in the end. And open item. Okay. So we talked about a bunch of things last week, but just based on this chart, I'll quickly give an update of where we are in terms of development. So in terms of the core controller logic, we have the main use cases of creation and deletion working just fine. There are a few bugs here and there, um, but nothing that just stands out. So the reason I say there are a few bugs here and there is a few bugs were raised when people started writing drivers or when people started using Cozy. We addressed almost all of them, and I believe some of the bugs are still under review, like the fixes for it are still under review. I don't believe there is any bug that we still haven't addressed, but when you start using it and you run into issues, we will know that there are other bugs that need to be addressed. So that's in terms of the core logic. We decided about 2 or 3 weeks ago that we will have the concept of a sample driver that's completely in memory and which does not actually have any vendor specific code in it. That sample driver code is still under review, um, and that is under Kubernetes SIGs, Cozy driver sample. So we left a bunch of comments. It was opened about 10 days ago. There were a bunch of comments left on it. I'm not sure if Nicholas has addressed them yet, but as soon as all the comments are addressed, we'll merge it right away. So going forward, this is the driver we're going to use for CI and to show as the example to whoever is going to start writing drivers. And that reminds me to talk about CI. So in terms of CI, we have someone named Tejas who unfortunately cannot join us at the regular meetings, but he is working with us and helping us set up CI. He's the person who set up the automated builds that happen every night in the Cozy repositories. And I've asked him to review this code as well. Um, so that he gets familiar with this code base, and because he's going to be running this in our CI, in the Kubernetes CI. And if anyone else would like to take a look at this code and leave some comments, that would be really good too. so we can move it forward. I believe all of the responsibility is kind of falling on Krish right now. Yeah, I asked Yanis also. Yanis is another person who unfortunately cannot join regularly. Out. So he talks to me at a time that's much more during work hours for him, and I tell him about what needs to be worked on, and I've also had him look at this code and give a review. Yanis is also actively contributing to this project, writing code. So yeah, so that's where we are in terms of development. Just wanted to give you a quick update. Do you have any questions so far? Cool. I wish Nicholas was here because we could have possibly just addressed the comments here itself. Because I don't know everything that's here. We could have possibly addressed the comments here itself and then merged it right away. Is Krish here? Krish is not here today. Okay, never mind. Okay.
SIG, it's a national holiday in Canada.
Oh, I see. Oh, what is the holiday? Just
It's Victoria Day.
Victoria Day. Got it. Got it. I didn't know. Um, okay, moving on. Let's talk about the KEP. So the plan that we came up last week for the KEP was we're going to quickly rewrite the KEP and simplify it, make it much smaller, and Ben was also saying a lot about this. The idea is we send small updates to Tim as we keep making them. But in the meantime, like with the first version of whatever we have, we simplify the KEP and then send it to Tim. Right now, it's bottlenecked on me because I said I will do the first step of simplification. So I'm going to finish it by today. Today, this is what my time will be spent on. But other than that, there's nothing much else to say. What I would ask is once we have the simplified version of the KEP, I would like to immediately send it to Tim for review. But in the meantime, while Tim is while we're still waiting for Tim, he's probably going to take a few days to take a look at it. While that's happening, we'll need everyone's help to go through the simplified version of the KEP. It's a full rewrite, but it should be easier and quicker to read. So it'll be good if everyone takes a look at it. So that's all in terms of updates. There's a technical discussion I want to start, but any other questions so far? Like in terms of when we'll go alpha or how that's going to work for anyone who missed last week's meeting. Okay, all right. So let's get into the technical discussion we were having last week where we left off. So if you look at our current APIs, let me open it up. Kubernetes SIGs, yeah, API. And if I go here, so we have a few types. We have the 6 types: the bucket access, and the surrounding types for these 2 resources, the classes and the requests. We were talking about the downward API or the structure or the data that will go into a pod that's requesting a bucket. Now that is going to be that needs to be a versioned and managed API because there'll be an external client that's going to consume it. Now we so far said that we will just put the fields from the bucket class dot protocol as the fields inside of bucket class dot protocol as the fields that will go into the pod that's requesting the bucket. But we soon found out that bucket class dot protocol is kind of rudimentary, and also it kind of doesn't make sense when you think about the bucket class as as a structure that's supposed to hold fields for a class or multiple buckets, but as what we're but what you're expecting by putting this into the pod is that this will have fields specific to that bucket. So two ideas clash and it kind of stops making sense. It really stops making sense. So we've been discussing, as of last week we were discussing what we should have in the downward API that goes down to the pod. And so far, what the discussion yielded was we will have a separate structure. We don't have a name for that structure yet. And that structure will hold the fields that are specific to what a pod needs in order to talk to the backend bucket. So the last thing we decided was we were talking about the S3 API, and within the S3 API, we talked about the fields that we would need. And let's continue the discussion on that. So let's look at what we have for S3, and we'll go from there. So currently in S3 protocol, we have region and signature version. So this by itself is not enough for a bucket, for a pod to talk to a bucket. So for a pod to talk to a bucket, it needs a bunch of fields. The first is the endpoint, which is either host name or the full FQDN to the actual bucket, or just the IP address. So if it's just an IP address or a host name, then it's the endpoint to the actual backend object storage system. If it is a host name followed by a path, then it's the path to the it's the full path to the actual bucket, not just to the object storage system. So we said we will capture that in a URL field called endpoint. Then we said we will have another field. Let me write these down so it's easier to follow. So we said we'll have an endpoint. Let me make this bigger. And we will have a bucket name. So this will be a URL field. This will just be a string field. And then we also said we need signature version, which will be a enum. And then we said we will need a region. So this will be the contents of bucket.yaml. And I believe we'll also need credentials. Now the question is, should credentials be a part of this structure and then just passed in, or should credentials do the thing that we were doing before, where the path for the credentials is communicated back to the cozy system from the driver, and then we kind of just place it there. That system quickly ends up being unusable because there's only one home path, and the credentials file for multiple buckets will start overwriting on top of each other. Will be overwritten on top of each other if we were to use a credentials file. So it kind of gets tricky to do that. Do you have any questions so far? Sweet. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going forward. So so bucket.yaml, this is what we decided. We'll have these fields. We'll have endpoint, bucket name, signature version, region, credentials, and well, you can have certificates as a part of the credentials field, right? Does anyone know?
You mean SSL?
Yeah.
I don't think it's related. I mean, it's not attached in any.
Well, I mean, like this certificate based authentication. These are not SSL certs.
So what type of certificates? I mean,
Let me think about this. It could be SSL certs, or it could be for the authentication itself. Maybe we should have something like auth-info or something. Yeah, the credentials page.
right. Also, signature version could be there in some way.
That's true. Makes sense. Yeah, I like how this is coming along actually. Endpoint, bucket name, region, auth-info. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Okay, we'll start with this then. Any thoughts about what we can name this structure? So we'll need an API type that will actually go into the pod. So what do we call this? Like downward bucket downward API, downward bucket API. Shing, would you know what's like how we should name this?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
So we need whenever a pod requests a bucket, we need to send it some information in a structured format. So we're defining the API structure for that format. Right now we just use a JSON file, but since we're creating a new API, we should give it a name. Like what do we call it?
The downward API is a formal recognized name in Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
So I think we
but-
want to.
Oh, you want
want-
something similar? Is it a new type that's similar?
Yeah, are we enhancing the existing downward API? Is that what you're suggesting, Sid, or just something similar?
It's something similar.
Okay, and this is in. I'm sorry, I got distracted a little bit for work stuff, but is this intended to replace the CSI volume communication mechanism we have defined now to the pod?
Well, right now it doesn't replace the CSI mechanism. CSI mechanism is a way to provide this to the pod, so that's orthogonal. This will just have this is the data that will be sent down to the pod either via CSI or by the kubelet or by secrets.
So we're saying there would be two ways for a pod to consume the bucket and credential information.
There'll be just one way.
Just one way.
This will be the new way.
This is a new way, and it's instead of the CSI driver section of the pod of the volume spec in a pod, right?
No, that will remain as it is, Jeff. So, okay, so that maybe we shouldn't call it downward API then. So what this is the structure that will go into the pod. This is not into the pod spec, but into the pod workload.
And where does it live in the pod?
At a specific path that I see where you're coming from. Sure, so you would still have to specify the CS like the volume info, which will give us a path. Yeah.
Okay, so is this more defining what the volume, the content, what the structure of the volume info files look like?
Yep.
File looks like.
Yep.
So it has these fields in it.
For S3.
It's a structured file. It would look like this, and it's okay that the credentials are in here mixed with other stuff. That auth info struct is okay to have in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's not we don't need to, I mean, it could be, do we expect that the credentials are encrypted?
But the pod needs to read it.
Mm-hmm.
So right. I know, Guy, I'm just thinking out loud. I could be wrong here. I'm just thinking out loud, really. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be encrypted while it is stored in etcd, best practice wise, but it's really up to whoever is running it. But when it comes to the pod, it cannot be encrypted. It has to be plain text.
Okay.
It can be base 64.
Yeah, base 64, sure, but sure. It's not encrypted still. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sid.
Mm-hmm. So how about this? How about if we call it S3 bucket info?
Yeah, I like that. That's pretty descriptive.
So we have type bucket info, which could be. Do we just define three types like S3 bucket info and?
Yeah, we can do that. And we had something like that at one point, even in the KEP for the bucket instance, protocol field. We sort of had a variant for each of the three types, Azure S3 and Google. But I thought there was feedback to sort of do a common denominator structure and not have specific types. I think we've gone back and forth there a few times.
Hey, should we have provider specific parameters here? No, right? No, we shouldn't have anything like that. Yeah. I was just wondering if you should have.
Why not bucket creds?
Oh,
Because
like,
info is like it doesn't convey the fact there is sensitive information inside. If
oh,
it
I
is
see.
bucket creds,
Bucket credentials, full name.
I think we are, so actually we are mounting the bucket access, right? In essence.
Well, it's a yeah, it's a new structure, but yes, in essence, it's bucket access. Yes.
We're doing both, Guy. We're mounting kind of an intersection of bucket and bucket access. Because bucket.
So I'm not sure if you don't have a bucket access, you cannot really mount anything, right?
Correct. But for instance, the BA, the bucket access object doesn't have a bucket name in it. And we're showing that here. So it's a little bit of a merge of bucket and bucket access.
Well, the fact that it doesn't have and it has a reference is it's a choice, it's a design choice, but it's like what we are providing to the pod is the access, right? It's not anything else. And I think that answers to what Vianney said, that he wants that to represent that there's secret information inside or anything like that.
Fair. That's a fair point.
I agree. So what do we call it now?
Bucket access info or anything like that.
Yeah, bucket access info is good.
Yeah,
that's
that
what
sounds
it is.
good. Vianney?
okay, no, all right.
And then just call each of the individual ones as S3 bucket access info and Azure bucket access info. Does that sound good? Same thing with GCS. Okay, so I'm going to take that as yes. Okay, so I'll need one of you to sign up to come up with the fields for Azure and GCS. Who can I rely on? Vianney, you have some experience with Azure, right? Do you think you could take a look at it and help us build out the fields there?
Yeah, so but we can do that now if you want. So
okay,
you need an endpoint. Let me check. So I'm connecting to the Azure portal, right? This is then I got the
storage account name, right, or something like that.
Yeah. So let me check. So I take one. I got one. So
storage account.
Okay.
So you need the storage account name. Yeah. Which is a string.
Okay.
And a key, which is a string as well.
Like just a storage account key, or?
So this is the secret, basically.
It's called key. Yeah.
Okay, should we put that into auth info? Should we have a separate struct called auth info anymore now?
Not so sure, depending on if we need more configuration, which somehow separates itself from authentication.
So you got also so you have two ways of connecting. Either you have the storage account name and the key, and you can constitute the connection string yourself, or sometimes you just provide the connection string. So it contains what they call the default endpoints protocol, which is HTTP or HTTPS, the account name, the account key, and what they call the endpoint suffix, which is generally core.windows.net.
So what they do with it is that they basically stringify or render, right, all the information into one thing they call a connection string.
Yeah, and there is no access key. So it's just a storage account name and secret key.
There's just secret key, right? Yeah.
Okay.
But somehow what they call the endpoint suffix is important.
Okay, so do we need a specific field called endpoint suffix?
So let me rephrase.
Okay.
So either you don't care at all, you don't know where, you don't want to know how it works, and you just provide the connection string, and the connection string contains everything that the lib Azure libraries need to know to operate. Or if you want to do it yourself, you need to have the protocol HTTP, HTTPS, or so the endpoint, and it's always ending by core.windows.net. And with the storage account name plus the secret key, you can connect. So you can remove line 18. There is no access key. If you want the access key, the storage account name.
Got it.
And you need the HTTP. It's called default endpoint protocol.
So scheme, like for endpoint scheme?
Endpoint protocol. I think.
Protocol, we have a object storage definition of it, like S3 Azure or GCS. Like so, if endpoint is a URL.URL, if it's HTTP, can we assume that it's and then HTTPS?
So basically, inside the connection string, you have I copy paste this.
Okay. In Amazon also we do that, where we have to specify secure equal to true or not. But can we say do you think it's reasonable to expect them to just infer it from the endpoint field?
Yeah.
Or do you think we need a separate?
No, definitely. So that's correct for me. So yeah, and so either you provide endpoint, storage account name, secret key, or connection string.
Okay.
So basically, if you provide the endpoint, you know what you're doing, and you know that you have to prepend it with HTTP or HTTPS, and you have to have the proper Windows domain name, which is core Windows.net. And basically, the endpoint is the bucket name .core. Something like that.
How does it? I mean, how does this model separate between an account and like an account credentials and the bucket, right?
Good question. So normally, if you have the storage account name and the secret key, you can do operations in the bucket. You don't need to have.
I remember you have 2 secret keys per account there, right?
Yeah, there is a fail-safe one, or one you can give away to somebody else, for instance.
In Azure, isn't it? Don't they call it a container name instead of a bucket name?
We had this discussion before. That the container is basically just top level folders within.
No, there is no bucket name. The bucket name is a storage account name.
Okay, so
I
what's the
think
access key then?
there is no account key. So if you have the storage account name and the secret key, you can access.
It's basically the secret key. You might say that the secret key is also the identifier in
Yeah.
some way. But the weird thing here is, how do you add more identities to access the same bucket, right? This is kind of a question. How does that work?
Yeah, so you have to, there is no complex IAM management. You don't have policies, nothing like that. But there is a mechanism called the shared access signature, where typically you can forge some kind of, like in Amazon S3, some kind of temporary key.
What ID?
It's called a shared access signature.
Okay, shell access signature.
Yeah, it's an URI, and typically you can forge it. So, for instance, if you go to the portal of Azure and you want to give access to somebody else, you forge the key. You say, hey, this person has the right to read, write, create files, and up to. So you have to specify an expiration time. And basically, you give the forged key, temporary key, to the person you trust.
So that forged key will be the secret key. Is that what it is?
It's not really a forged key. It's a URI.
Oh, okay. So will that go into connection string?
That's a good one. That's a good one. How can you use it?
So to construct this string, you need, let's see.
Let me generate one.
The shared key or shared key light, account name, signature. Okay, so I see.
Oh, it's a connection string. Yeah.
It's a connection string. Okay.
So it can be a connection string or what they call a SAS token.
Okay, what is a SAS token?
So a SAS token. So let me check.
It's a shared access
Signature.
say signature. Yes. SAS.
So yeah. So okay.
Your SAS token.
So the SAS token, if it's want, it's a query param. So it starts with a question mark, and you have variables. Basically, the variables sum up the main properties, so that when you get the token, you know, for instance, the expiration time. So it's in clear. But there is also, of course, the signature, which is encrypted.
Like this. This is the full connection string. Storage.
So what they call the SAS token is after the question mark.
Yeah,
and the URI. So again, two cases. Either you know what you're doing, and if you just have the SAS token, you can forge the URI by yourself because it's obvious, right? Or if you don't want to know anything about the details, you just provide. There is always a means to provide what they call the connection string, and you just copy paste the whole thing. It works, right?
Okay, so this can go into the credential string you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we call it credential string or connection string?
I think it's connection string is the right term.
Connection string.
Break it up into resource resource string and then SAS token.
No, we should do to line 19. You should have an optional SAS token for people that want to specify the token by themselves. It's optional.
Which is either a secret key or a SAS token, right?
So the SAS token is a query, a list of query parameters.
Right, but I mean that it's instead of the secret key.
I think yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Which means it's an alternative. I also saw that there's there seems to be three methods, right? Either you can even use OAuth tokens from Active Directory.
Well, OAuth tokens we cannot use, right? Because
Yeah.
OAuth is supposed to be, supposed to have Azure authenticated. So they'll who or if Azure is using, say, GitHub OAuth, I don't think it's using GitHub OAuth, but let's say it's using GitHub OAuth, it'll have to authenticate with GitHub, not through us. We can't hold that token.
Oh yeah.
We're not what do you mean holding it? It's the Active Directory is the OAuth provider, basically, in that sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to open another. I just meant that it seems like they have three methods, regardless of the fact that it's a connection string or separate. But seems like the REST API allows either signed requests using this secret key, sorry, and or some OAuth mechanism, or this shared key thing, right? It
So
seems like there's three options.
personally, I haven't seen that. It's
The Active
possible.
Directory one, I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably possible, but generally, when you have an application accessing bucket, it's those two methods.
Got it. Okay.
And so like SAS token here, we also need in S3 the option to pass on the STS token, right? It's
oh, like connection string here.
not connection string. It's the analog of SES. It's just STS within.
So
yeah, but we said we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. So the question is, if we don't do it for S3, should we do it here?
But this is different though. This is a URL for the entire bucket. Ah, I see. There is
No, I'm asking about the SAS token, regardless of the connection string. For a second.
So the connection string is the equivalent of STS token. So with the STS token, what you can do is you can say it's for temporary credentials, and you construct a full URL to the exact resource. Like let's say you want to allow someone to upload to a certain bucket, you create an STS token, and then for that bucket, and then you construct a full URL, a signed URL, with the URL to the endpoint of the actual directory to which you want the person to be able to upload, and then the token along with it. And anyone who has that URL can upload it.
Not exactly. So what you just described is actually Azure.
I'll show you AWS STS S3. So
STS is
it is temporary.
Yeah, it's
right.
temporary.
So the point is that the secret, or in any case, right, the access key, secret key, or the secrets are permanent, and then you would like to generate temporary credentials, and then the STS or SAS come into play. The question is, if we're not,
it's not exactly the same. So
it's not, yeah, go ahead.
STS is a third, if you want, a second key, second secret key for Amazon S3. And there is another mechanism in Amazon, which is a signed URLs. So typically you can also forge a temporary, which you would say would be closer to the SAS tokens.
Yeah. Presigned URL, yeah.
So presigned URL has nothing to do with STS. Right?
Yeah, that's true. But see, it actually uses STS. Look at this. Presigned URLs cannot be done without STS. It is a separate concept.
Oh yeah, it can now be done with STS, but you don't have to. It's just
no, but it's the same concept. It's just a matter of assigning a specific resource versus the entire bucket, like access to specific resource and operation. It means encoding within the signed request some more restrictions about what you can do, right?
Well, no, it's basically access to this, but this is temporary. In Amazon, presigned URL is temporary. no matter how you look at it, it's not a long-term thing. But it looks like in Azure, it's a long-term thing. I can just have this string and I can use it for as long as I need it, unless I revoke. It's valid. But
So let me check how long you can
in STS, sorry, SAS.
Yeah, I think you can specify any duration. Like
So
5 years.
I guess the question is why support it in one protocol and not the other? The fact that we're talking about temporary credentials.
Because apparently an STS token is 36 hours, right?
Yeah, it says right here. STS token is 36. No matter what, it's only limited.
While a SAS token is potentially many years.
Yeah. Did you check?
But there is no limit when you, I'm on the form, there is some kind of form to generate it.
Can you check? Can you send me the link on chat?
It's on the private portal of Azure. So it's not a shareable link.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
But I think you can, if you type shared access signature generator, there is a public one. Can you try?
How long the essay is valid? See, for example, you can control how long the essay is valid. Okay, let's see.
But still, why is this important? I mean, is it like it can't? I guess that the question we had with S3 was we can start supporting S3 without STS, right? That was the assumption.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, so we want the MVP of this feature to go out, and then we will add more complexity. Is Azure not viable without SAS? Is that what you think?
We're thinking Azure might be viable without SAS. That's the other way, in the sense that we don't need we don't need to support SAS. If we can do, because if it's always limited, then we need wiring to deal with refresh and all that. We don't have that, so I would avoid SAS if it's always limited. Actually, I would just avoid it, because if there is a possibility of it being limited, then we can run into issues where they put an SAS token in, or the driver creates an SAS token, but then things don't work still because it probably expired. So we want to avoid such a situation, right?
At least for now, right? Until we have a different mechanism, if we decide for credentials. But yeah, so I guess that's what we said for S3. So.
Okay, so when not to use SAS, sometimes the risk associated with a particular operation against your storage account outweigh the benefits of using SAS. For such operations, create a middle tier service that writes to your storage account after performing business rule validation of the user. Also, sometimes it's simpler to manage access keys in other ways. Yeah.
I would support SAS tokens, just because sometimes you have a public bucket, for instance, which is but if we do that for Azure, we have to also support query strings for S3. Same way in S3, you have presigned URLs that grant access to public buckets for a very long time, right?
It's public. Why do you need access tokens?
Presigned URLs are also restricted for an operation. You cannot upload using that if you get a presigned URL for get, right?
It's only for get.
No, you can do it for anything. Presigned for anything. You can do upload, you can do whatever.
No, I know. What I'm saying is that you need a different presigned URL for every operation.
True. Well, you can have one URL for all under a certain directory.
I haven't used it, so I didn't see that there's an option to presign a URL without a method.
Actually, you
without
might be
a resource.
Right. You might be right, because I've not used it, just like you said it. I'll have to check. Sorry. I assumed something like that is possible, but might not be.
So my understanding of presign, you presign to every request that you want to send. Then right? So if you want to allow somebody to get an object, you generate a pre-signed URL for that get request.
Okay, so here's
So
what
every operation.
I think it just recognizes you. I don't think it recognizes the operation. So the capabilities of the URL are limited by the permissions of the user who created the pre-signed URL.
So the point of pre-signed URLs in Amazon S3 is that they are limited to 7 days.
Yeah. But with SAS tokens, I think we should not have SAS token because there is this possibility of it expiring and us, things just stop working all of a sudden. And we don't even have a mechanism to like clean it up or, like forcefully even remove it.
Okay, so then remove it.
Yeah. But what about connection string? Is that based on SAS or does it work all on its own?
So you can forge a connection string which contains a SAS token.
Should we still have that or should we just take that out also because that's based on SAS again?
If you look at the connection string, you'll see it's just the other fields, right? Encoded somehow. It's just a way to encode this struct into a string.
Well, it seems to have a SAS token which comes with that encoded value.
It's optional. It's optional, like any other thing. So
is it optional?
A connection string, yes, a connection string is simply an encoding of this structure which we're talking about right now.
Got it.
So if somebody really wants to use a SAS token, they could, because they could use the connection string.
If you support it, I mean, it's still a question here, and if we need, even
if we don't want to support SAS tokens, they can still specify SAS tokens in the connection string, right?
No, what Guy is saying is, what if we remove this field? Then they can't. So we're still talking about it, right?
Yeah, you can't really remove it because there are plenty of applications relying on that. I mean, you have two types. As I said,
of course, applications sometimes want a connection string, but it's just like applications sometimes want the S3 credentials file, right? We said that we will create it from this structure if needed.
No, but I've seen some apps actually that don't always want a connection string.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah.
Just to explain, right? Even a lot of applications would still need, with S3, would still need the credentials to be not in some random YAML file, but actually in the credentials file for S3, right? So we still need to have an init container in these cases to set up the SDK for Azure or for S3 from this bucket access info correctly, right? So
my point is you have three types of applications. You have the application that support specifying the two ways. So you can specify endpoint, storage account name, secret key, or a connection string. So it's different environment variables, and they detect if you specify one way or the other. But there are some applications.
Just like S3. S3 also has applications that will enforce you to pass things as environment variables versus others that will go and read using the SDK, go read the credentials file from the file system. So it's the same. It's just a matter of, we will have to put some init container in these cases to adapt this bucket access information to the application.
So Vianney, in order for it to become cozy compatible, they'll have to support these three.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they would have to forge is it Guy talking? They would have to have a init container.
Right.
Creating the environment variable.
Right.
If needed. Right.
Or whatever that is. Like it could be environment variable, it could be a file, whatever that is. But with these three informations, like with these three pieces of information, can they talk to the backend? That's the question. Like if this is enough, we should just stick with this, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes there is also
region or
because on the server side you can enforce using HTTP or HTTPS.
Okay.
And the problem is, for instance, if you so I think by default it's HTTPS only, but you can also remove the constraint on the server side. But if you are not aware
Mm-hmm.
One source of problem is you don't specify, you, for instance, you enforce HTTPS and people are using HTTP and doesn't work. So generally there is I mean, there is something around that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's you can use it in the endpoint, right?
Okay. Okay. So so you're saying this HTTPS? Is that what you're saying?
No, the thing is sometimes if you deactivate the option on the server side, you can use HTTP or HTTPS.
Mm-hmm.
But if for some reason you enforce HTTPS on the server side, then if you provide HTTP, you will have an error. I know it's a source of error.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the endpoint, it should just be like, it's provided to us by the driver, so we'll just put it to whatever it's supposed to be. I don't think we should get into that business of enforcing it, right? Like we will give the workload whatever the driver gives us, and if the driver gives us HTTPS, then we will show HTTPS to the workload. If it gives us HTTP, we'll show HTTP to the workload.
Okay.
That's all.
So then also the container name.
Okay, container. I thought the storage account name had the container name. No.
No.
No, this is more of a prefix.
Yeah, it's
equivalent for AWS S3, right?
Yeah, but generally in the application you provide the container name on top of the storage account name.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say, just like, kind of like, tell me if the descriptions also make sense. Okay, I might be wrong about this.
No, not really. I think the first level is the storage account name. Actually, this is actually the bucket. This represents the entire storage container, or not storage container, the storage bucket. But it's also somehow, there is no access key in the sense that you think about access keys in AWS, where you provision or where you mint more access keys with access key secret keys. And the container name is basically a prefix within that bucket.
It's a first level prefix. It's a first level prefix.
Right. It's a top folder. Right. It's
top folder is the right term.
And it's optional, right? Because there is also a default, what they call a default container, or a root container or something, right?
I think they call that the top levels folders.
But I mean, it is optional, right? You don't have to provide the container name.
I see.
So sometimes applications will automatically create their containers.
I see.
Right.
Sometimes they expect the container to be already created. I mean,
but Cozy doesn't support all these models in the provisioning itself. So we're just saying that the driver can notify what it did to the workload in some way. So if the bucket class will specify some way of doing that in its opaque parameters, I would like you to create container names or don't create containers, whatever. And then the driver will do that, and then we'll pass on this information back to the pod, right?
So the thing is, sometimes applications don't care where they are stored, right? They just want a bucket somewhere. So sometimes it's good to provide a container name for those. So they just use whatever name you provide. And sometimes they decide by themselves and they create the container names they want. You see?
Yep.
But in some cases, they don't care, and it's good because this way you can manage multi-tenancy within your storage account. If you have multiple
but for these cases, there's also the default one, right? The default one also provides some access like that. Or you don't think it's being used that much? Do you remember we looked at this before, right? That there's there's an option where this default is in effect without specifying, or they call it like a, I don't know, like a dollar root or there's some fixed name for it. And then the application will actually use the REST API, the REST URLs without a container name somehow.
Yeah. The thing is, some big data applications, they expect that you provide the container name, because they just want like basically a storage account container name pair they can use, and they just drop their files in it or read their files from it. So we have to specify the container name in there, because it's part of the.
So this should be there. As far as we're concerned, we should only decide whether we should have the field or not, and we should have the field, right? That's what you're saying, right, Benny?
I think so.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so can one of you go back and check if this is enough? Just to
yeah,
make
it's certainly enough. But the thing that I'm not really sure about is what we're doing with Azure is how do we mint credentials actually in that model? I'm a little bit confused. I don't think they have the same mechanism, so we won't be able to, like a driver won't with this model won't be able to create as many secret keys as it needs to, as far as I remember.
Oh, they have service accounts.
Again, what?
They have service accounts.
No, you can create a storage account with an API.
You cannot?
Right. But
no, you can.
Okay.
You can, but this is a bucket. This is also a bucket. I mean, if I want just to access an existing one and create, right? So, and I need new credentials for it. In AWS, I can create an IAM credential for it, right?
So then we have to support SAS tokens because it's
right. This is what I'm not sure if this is really equivalent in the sense.
I think SAS tokens are the equivalent of IAM.
Could be.
It's very similar to Presigned URL.
There is some difference, right? SAS tokens are.
But this is how they achieve access control.
So everyone, we're out of time. Let's continue the discussion on Thursday. I think it's very good so far. Guy and Vianney as well. Can you go back and verify how that account credential generation should work, and maybe come and tell us on Thursday how it should work?
Yeah.
And
sure.
if you have a solution or an architecture that you can come up with for how to do this on our side, that will also be good. I mean, assuming that it's different from what AWS has.
It is a little bit, yeah.
Okay, good to know. Awesome then.
Perfect.
All right, talk to you all on Thursday. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.